So, hi, my name is Revd Ian Liddell, and I'm coordinating chaplain at Cardiff University. And I'm here today talking with Ian Worsfold, who is coordinating chaplain at City University of London. So we know each other reasonably well, both being coordinating chaplains in the Methodist Church. But we're here today not to talk about chaplaincy, but to talk about, because this is part of our LGBT History Month, to talk about being gay. So Ian, hi, how are you doing?
Hi, Del. Yeah, I'm really well, thanks. It's good to be with you today.
Fab. Tell us a bit about yourself to start off with.
Well, in terms of ministry, I've been in ministry since 2003. And you mentioned we know each other quite well. We were ordained the same year in 2005 down in Torquay. I've served two circuit appointments in Methodism. My first was in Great Yarmouth for 5 years. Then I spent 6 years in the Coventry and London circuit before moving to London to be coordinating chaplain, where I've been for, this is my 7th year there. Now, grew up in Basildon in Essex, but I've managed to lose the accent over the years.
Okay, great. And so tell us about your sexuality. When did you know you were gay? That kind of stuff. How did that all happen for you?
That's a bit of a cliche answer in that it's that kind of sense of always knowing I was different in some way, which a lot of gay people have that experience. But I grew up in the church, in a sense. I was sent to Boys Brigade at the age of 8 because I had a bit of a strained relationship with my stepdad, who wanted me to toughen up a bit. So I was sent to Boys Brigade, which happens to be at the Methodist Church. And I found a real lovely home in Methodism and in the church. But there were those kind of subliminal messages coming from the church, not directly, but there was just this underlying tone about stuff to do with sexuality. This probably wasn't compatible with Scripture and with Christianity. And so I just kind of that stuff as I was growing up. I went to university. I became Christian Union president, which is a very evangelical setting. But all that time I was sort of having a bit of a conflict of what was going on within me, knowing that this stuff was in there somewhere. And it wasn't until my early 20s when I was leading worship of all places at Easter People in the youth venue. I was there with a band and very cool, very charismatic experience going on, and really, really great to be part of all of that. But there was this inner conflict, and I knew that I had to deal with it in some shape or form that week. And I knew I had to talk to somebody and voice those words that I'd just kind of buried for years, really. And by the grace of God, the person I choose to tell was a gay Methodist minister. Because there were lots of people in that venue that day that may have had a very different reaction had I come out to them at that point. And I will always be grateful to that minister for what he offered me from that point and friendship onwards. So yeah, early 24, I finally kind of acknowledged who I was.
Yeah, that must have been a really scary moment, though. As a young person at Easter People, growing up with the very sort of evangelical understanding of sexuality, and then reaching that point where you couldn't hold it in anymore. You needed to deal with it. And I mean, that must have been a really scary moment for you.
It was, because it took a lot of trust to tell somebody. And like you say, given that environment, and my faith was so important to me at that point. I became a Christian in my late teens. I had a fairly evangelical conversion experience, and that still remains with me. And my sort of evangelical roots in my faith remain with me even now. But that moment, yeah, it took a lot of courage to actually tell somebody. And I mean, I can almost still feel the kind of the pain of somebody, and the emotion that came out that night was quite something. But there was just this release of stuff that needed to come out. It was only from that point on that I started to sort of live more authentically as me, rather than this person who people expected me to be as an evangelist.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so what did happen next for you?
I maintained contact with the person who I came out, and for obvious reasons, I'm not going to name him because I don't know how out he is in the church. and began to explore ministry from that point. So I graduated from Southlands, and I ended up staying on as assistant chaplain for a couple of years. I was the first assistant chaplain at what was then the new South College, and continued to explore ministry. But there was this kind of inner battle going on within me, thinking, are these two things compatible? It took me a while to acknowledge that I could be gay and be Christian. It took me even longer to acknowledge that I could be gay, Christian, and potentially in a relationship with somebody. And then there was the whole question about ministry. What was God calling me to? And was that compatible with this whole sexuality stuff? So it wasn't a case of coming out and all was rosy. There was still a lot of stuff to work through and unpick theologically for myself within the context of the church. But Southlands was a good environment to explore that with some people around, and I will forever be grateful to Rob Jones for those early experiences in chaplaincy and for how he nurtured me in ways that he'll understand actually, but he just enabled me to explore who I was without really saying a lot about it. He didn't know I was gay at the time, but he just enabled me to be me, which was really a gift.
So what has the reaction of the church been largely when people have found out that you're gay?
It's not been straightforward and easy, but I would want to make the point quite strongly that of all the churches to be an ordained minister in, I would say Methodism is probably the most affirming. I mean, obviously I can't speak entirely for other denominations, but from what I hear and from my experience of talking to clergy in other denominations, there is a sense in which Methodism is better at this stuff. It doesn't get it always right, but then who does? And there has been pain along the way. I've had people leave church for my sexuality. I've had people refuse to take communion from me, and that hurts. But the overall sense I get is affirmation, and that's largely through people that know me well know that I'm partnered to Paul, who's a Methodist minister and works with the connectional team. And the Methodist Church has been very gracious with us. We've been stationed to the same circuit previously, where we've received a lot of affirmation as a couple. We lead the worship at the conference, and the vast majority of people who have any understanding of us know that we're together, and certainly the people on the platform do. And there's no question about be there or not. It's just accepting our ministry for the people we are, people who have been called to this ministry by God, and who the church has tested that call and has affirmed all the way through. So, yeah, I'm not going to say it's easy, but I want to say that the overriding sense is of affirmation of me and the great graces I bring and that we bring together, I hope, as a couple.
Yeah, and it is wonderful, your ministry together. I mean, I've been at a conference where you guys have been leading us in worship, and it's just been such a spiritually uplifting moment. So thank you for your ministry together. And
well, I Methodist Church for the opportunity, because it's just a beautiful privilege, really. So.
Yeah, of course. And I'm just wondering whether there is a sense in which, because as a Methodist Church we do hold together contradictory convictions, as we are used to saying, I'm just wondering whether there is an element not only of the affirmation that you've had from people, but also a sense of open-handedness about your ministry and your relationships from people who perhaps aren't able to affirm affirm same-sex relationships, but are able to be very even so be very supportive and accepting of you as people and as ministers.
And when we do this well, when we get this right, this is one of Methodism's most beautiful gifts, is that ability to, we talk about it in chaplaincy actually, about disagreeing well and holding those convictions together and together no matter what, recognising that Christ is at the centre of who we are. And I have had many conversations with brothers and sisters who don't share my views, and yet we still have a friendship, we still have a colleagueship, and we affirm each other because we recognise that we are all called by God to this stuff. And it's not easy, and we work through it, and we don't all understand everything about God, about Scripture. We're constantly learning all the time. And I remember training as a preacher. I think when I realised why I was a Methodist was reading John Wesley's Sermon on the Catholic Spirit. That notion of you and I think alike, take my hand, starting point. It's not that we'll ever agree on everything, and I hold the convictions that I have. but not with arrogance, with that sense that I must be wrong, and my brother or sister who holds very different opinions might just be right. And I hope that they afford me the same. And that's the journey we walk together, that we're trying to Christ in the midst of us, revealing all sorts of stuff to us along the way. But that's one of Methodism's beautiful gifts, is that sense of being able to disagree, but see Christ in each other and at the centre of who we are.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you. It's been really interesting talking to you.
Thanks, Del.